In over a decade of NBA basketball, Karl-Anthony Towns not only became arguably the second greatest player in Minnesota Timberwolves history, he's also become, oddly, one of the most disrespected players in the league. But why? How did one of the NBA's greatest shooting big men ever become a punching bag for media and fans alike? I'm Jerry, and this is a Clutch original on how Karl-Anthony Towns became so hated across the NBA. As of 2024, Karl-Anthony Towns not only holds the franchise record for most three-pointers in Minnesota Timberwolves history, he's also second behind only Kevin Garnett in over 14 different franchise statistics. And he's quietly averaged a double-double for over 70% of his NBA career. But for much of his tenure in Minnesota, he became one of the most disrespected players in the league. From weird nicknames like Big Purr, from his voice changes and his style of play.
Purr, what the f is that?
So, how'd this one happen? Cat became a product of the modern NBA, and some fans hated it. Yes, being the most prolific three-point shooting big man ever, and being the only center to ever win the NBA three-point contest goes against the old NBA. But it wasn't always like this for Cat. In 2014-15, his lone college year at Kentucky, he averaged 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, and shot just 0.2 threes per game, making just 2 of them in 39 games. In fact, in 2015, when he was drafted #1 overall, he was considered a defensive star, not an offensive force. Now Cat's three-point shots per game have increased from 1 per game his rookie season to over 5 per game in 2024, peaking at nearly 8 threes a game in 2020. But this is really just a product of basketball development, because after experiencing his old viral post-up moment with DeMarcus Cousins, he needed to develop other parts of his game. Just look at how his shot changed from college. Wildly, he's now 2 pounds lighter than he actually was in college, going from 250 to 248. And he's stronger than ever. But even being a multi-skilled big man isn't enough to get your team into the postseason. Despite leading the Wolves in win shares in every season he played for them, aside from the final 2, fans complained about the team's improvement. Because going into 2021, Minnesota had made the playoffs just 1 year since drafting Cat, a 1-4 loss to Houston in the 2018 first round. And the introduction of Anthony Edwards in 2020 appeared to be a more significant shift in team culture, making the playoffs 3 out of the 4 seasons since Edwards was drafted. So what does win share really mean? Because in Cat's 9-year tenure with the T-Wolves, they had a 47% win percentage with him, and a 44% win percentage without him. But the biggest knock that gained significant hate wasn't his regular season play. It's what he did in the postseason. Playoff Cat was never a good term until 2024. It's expected that when the playoffs roll around, that your 4-time All-Star and 2-time All-NBA player will step up. Until 2024, Cat had 3 playoff appearances, and they were rough. Not only were they all first-round exits, his play was a huge topic of discussion, because in those first 3 appearances, he averaged 18.6 points, 11.4 rebounds, 3.6 turnovers, and 3.8 fouls per game. All worse than every single stat of his regular season averages. His 2018 playoff debut, just a combined 13 points in 2 games. And despite a slightly better performance in the 2022 series, falling to Memphis 4-2, there were still glaring issues. Early foul trouble in games 2 and 3, averaging 4.2 fouls per game and 4.5 turnovers per game in that series. And in 2023, it looked like it was over for Cat. Another playoff appearance, this time against the Denver Nuggets, but this was his worst playoff series ever. Game 1, 5 for 15 from the field and 1 for 7 from deep. Game 2, 5 fouls and 5 turnovers. And he fouled out of games 4 and 5. Shooting a horrendous 25% from 3 led to fans asking for him to be out of Minnesota, with reporters even saying that his playoff performances would eventually lead to him getting traded out of Minnesota. But in 2024, it did turn around for him. Many said, like Patrick Beverley, that he was the MVP of that Denver series for guarding Nikola Jokic, overall having the greatest playoff run not only of his career, but helping Minnesota reach their first Western Conference Finals in 20 years. Minnesota was hot, and the hate of Cat was low. Then he got traded and has flourished to start his time in New York. So fans have found other ways to disrespect Towns. Over his career, fans have picked at his nicknames, becoming second fiddle to Anthony Edwards. And his habit of changing his voice from interview to interview. Fans will always find a way to nitpick the NBA's best, right? And Cat's no exception to that. But it seems as long as Cat keeps talking to the media, fans will always find something to hate. Can Karl-Anthony Towns silence the haters once and for all?